Okay.
Mhm.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have a special guest with me tonight, Gloria Hass, who is an experiencer. And I've always said, if you want to know what's going on in the world with the UFO phenomena, you've got to listen to the experiencers. Gloria is a visionary starseed, natural
Mhm.
born clairvoyant, healer, and medium with mediumship abilities, along with having many gifts, including remote viewing, remote touching, all the clairs. She's got every one of the clairs down here, seeing and communicating with spirit. She has very detailed vision and dreams with messages, which I'm interested in. She can physically and telepathically teleport to other places and dimensions. Gloria has experienced a multi-dimensional contact since she was a child. This contact includes interactions with over 20 extraterrestrial beings. I've heard one version came out. There's only 9 versions of beings, and you've dealt with 20. So I'm interested in that, and many other dimensional beings, which I want to talk about that. And we'll sort of leave the others. The book I have behind is one of the books that Gloria has written, and she's got another one that we're going to talk about, My Journey as a Gray Hybrid, which I'm very interested in. Just a little interesting side note to this whole thing that people will know I wrote a book called Tuned In, the Paranormal World of Creativity, and I wrote about a woman by the name of, now her name's going to escape me here, Patti Smith. Patti Smith was the first woman to sing on Saturday Night Live. She sang a song called Gloria, Gloria, famous song on Saturday Night Live, and she didn't believe she was from around here. You see her story. She said, "I don't come from around here." She believed she had she was from another planet, or she was a hybrid. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So welcome, Gloria, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to pick your brain and find out what you've learned from your lifetime of experiences with beings.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
You're a prolific author. How many books have you put out?
Well, if you don't count the journals, probably close to 30. I have
Wow,
blank line journals. Yeah.
wow, that's impressive. That's almost like there's a couple of people in the UFO field that have done 30. So congratulations on that. And let's go to maybe through your history of how you got into this weird world of extraterrestrial. Maybe first define, are we talking extraterrestrials? Are we talking multidimensional beings?
I came from the Greys. I was actually born as a gray extraterrestrial.
Okay,
And
how does that work?
I'm told that it's along the timeline of, when our energy goes from, multi-beings, dimensions and everything. And I had one woman tell me about some other past things. She said, very old timeline, very old energy. And I guess one of the side trips, one of my lives, if people believe in that, was with the gray extraterrestrials. I remember being raised on a spaceship and standing in a group of other grays that we were children of childhood age, and we were taken in to what you would call a school, and we were taught different things. And I remember also being in search and rescue as well as recovery as a gray extraterrestrial.
Wow. So talk a little bit about I've heard before about this teaching on the ship. What does that entail? Is that like telepathy and different um, skills of psychic skills?
Yes, where we were taught how to use equipment, as well as we were all together, like the telepathic skills, as well as similar to schoolrooms that we have, as children here on Earth. And I often wondered when I looked around, there were some that didn't quite fit the bill. So they're probably hybrids that were raised on the ship. I don't mean by fit the bill. They didn't look like a regular gray to me, because I was a regular gray on the ship. So there were a lot of us being taught the ways of telepathic technology, and then we would break off into what our roles were and what we were chosen to be, similar to how the Asian community picks the people as to their strengths, what job they will have. It's the same as when we were raised up and said, this is what you are going to do.
And how do you make how do they make the transition? Is it a timeline thing where you move into the human aspect that you're in now?
What happened was I had a choice of either being extinct, uh, or I've staying on the planet. I would love to have stayed on the planet. I enjoyed working in that area, but I believe it was more of, you can choose to be here and go extinct, which means I would pass probably a death, or I would still pass a death, and then my soul would come into a human child. And I came into a stillborn baby in the delivery room.
Wow. And okay, so where are the grays from? What's the origin? Because there's various versions of what's your interpretation of where the grays are from? Are they on the ship or do they come from a planet?
Both. I've had experience with both. On the planet, we took care of animals, and it was like inside of almost like a bubble, like a mist. There were all different types of animals and birds and plants, and we would help take care of that and make sure everything was okay. And anything dying off, we were to pick and put into put on the ground or into a mulch pile similar to that. And we would, it was a very calm and peaceful place to be. And the interesting part that I found was, well, and now I find it interesting as part of a human, was that I could touch the leaf of a plant and gather the nutrients through my fingertips, through the little suction cup fingertips. I didn't have to eat anything physically. And then there was like a decontamination area, like a hut that we would go into to have any of the pollen and everything taken off of us before we would go into our quarters. And then the other part of the time I was on the spaceship, where I knew technology and could see all the different stars around me as we traveled. And then in search and rescue that I was trained in, I would sit behind, similar to a console. We would see a screen just hanging in the air. And I remember going through the screen. It would come upon a time we'd be watching and for the extraterrestrials that were on the ground, that were doing research or whatever they were there for. And then if they were past their timeline, it would come up on our screen. And then we would go through, like walking through a computer monitor. And then we'd come out a portal on the ground almost immediately, dressed similar to what the people of the time were wearing. And then we were searching out, we knew the basic coordinates of where the extraterrestrial was, who needed help.
Wow. And so the grays have gotten a lot of bad rap in the last little while. How do are you the tall grays, the short grays, or can you relate yourself to what other people talk about when they talk about the grays? Is it the same?
The short grays. I'm from the short grays.
Okay. And a lot of people talk about them being robotic. Are they robotic or are they biological? They're just because you hear people saying they don't have any emotion, and all sorts of ideas about what their role is in terms of, they've lost their civilization and they're trying to, recapture the DNA and stuff like that, or they're coming from the future. What's your interpretation of that?
My interpretation is some of them have emotions, some of them don't, depending on their breeding. I was basically matter of fact. I didn't really have emotions. So my Earth mother would tell me that when something tragic would happen, and it didn't bother me. And she would say, "What is wrong with you? Why don't you have feeling?" It wasn't something that I felt. And I know that when I did search and rescue, it was all matter of fact that I would go down, get the extraterrestrial, and if they were already expired because they had been killed, I would telepathically let them know on the ship, and they would tell me come back to the ship, and they would take care of the remains on their own, or they would just leave the extraterrestrial there, or they would decompose it. And it all depended on the situation, what they did. But I have had an experience with extraterrestrials that, like my hybrid children, um, like my firstborn inherited my mother's mental illness. So he was really off the charts with what was going on. And my daughter has emotion, but my youngest son is all matter of fact, no emotion. So I believe it's how the DNA sequence works out through the entire process. And the ones I have found to be really robotic were the tall grays.
Okay. And how does your mother fit into the whole scenario? Like, do they, like you hear this thing where they're taken and they take the egg and the sperm. Is that how, is your mother connected? Or she got experiences?
No, I don't believe she did, but she would never talk about it. She always thought it was dumb and it was stupid. But when it came to, she never really even liked Star Trek or any of that. My dad was an avid Star Trek fan, but he would debunk anything about aliens and all of that, that they were real. But through my father's side of the family, I have an eighth cousin who also has had experiences. We're related through his his my dad's mother's side of the family and my cousin's mother. So that's how we're related in that way. But my other cousins, I don't know if they had experiences because I didn't grow up around them. But with my Earth mom, she gave birth to a stillborn child, and that's when I went into the child had not been breathing for 5 minutes. And the doctor was going to claim the baby still dead. And they said, it's time. And it was time for me. And I entered the baby's body and started breathing.
And what is the role? Like in maybe your role, and what's the role of sort of like, or how would you call it? What's it all about? Like what are the Greys doing? What is their, why are they here? What's their role? What are they adding? And in terms of how does it work in terms of reality? In terms of the big picture, how does it all fit together?
Well, it fits together with them bringing people together. Like me, I was raised in a very abusive family. And then I was exposed to all these toxins. It's like an experimental process of who's going to be the hardiest, I believe. And I believe they are making a hardier race to go ahead and carry on. And I believe that they've always been here and have always done these things. And it came about to even be more aggressive to getting a hardier race for, it's no different for them as well as the humans. And it's no different than somebody, in my opinion, getting a prosthetic limb to be able to keep functioning at a better, higher rate. And then you have the neural implants, people can see, to me, it's the same thing.
Is there any spiritual aspect to what they're doing, or is it just strictly physical adaptation or making people stronger?
There is a spiritual aspect to it. I remember before I was impregnated with my last extraterrestrial child, I remember being taken into this, I have it written down. I'm gonna
Okay. Yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
gonna put my glasses on and read
Yeah.
it because it's fascinating and I don't want to leave anything out.
Okay.
Okay, before I mated with my extraterrestrial mate, there was a ritual that I had attended. I was in a vastly large UFO, and there were a lot of other gray aliens present. I was also with other people who were going to be mated. Once we had gathered, all of us were taken to a smaller room, and after a while, we were escorted to this enormously open room where we were with an alien called Mother. This room looked out of place to what the other rooms looked like on the UFO. And I believe that we were transported into a room on a planet. And because when I was in the room and I looked around it, the walls looked like they were made from tan colored stone. There was a wall that had a light coming through what looked like a carved sun. This wall didn't have a window. And I thought it was interesting that the light looked like sunlight, the way that the beam came down and was able to shine through the thick stone. And the light shone on a long, slender stone table that didn't have anything on it. And what I noticed that none of the walls had windows, but the beings looked like they had small Peruvian heads, and they were either walking or floating around this room while performing a ritual. There was the middle table, there was one on the left and also one on the right. And what they would do is they would go to the right, to the table, to the right of the center table, they would pick up an object. And then once they picked it up, they would move to the center table, held the object in the beam of sunlight, and then they would wait for a little bit. I don't know if they were praying or anything because everything was quiet and nothing. It was like you couldn't hear anything telepathically. It was as if it was, the sacred ritual. And then after they would, after they shone it in the light for a little bit, then they would go and place the object on the table to the left. And then they moved away, and then all the beings took their turn. And after the ceremony was over, we were taken back to the spacecraft, and then we came home to our beds. So this was before impregnation, and I'm wondering if the stones didn't represent each one of the people in the room who were going to be impregnated.
Interesting. That's from your book. Show the book that's from. That's from the gray, the book
My
about the gray.
journey, yeah, my journey as a gray hybrid, and that's on page 47,
Is that your
46 and 47.
is that your most recent book?
The one behind you, the metaphysical, paranormal, and visionary encounters, that's my latest book. This one came out in 2020,
Yeah.
in 2023.
Yeah.
And the one behind you came out beginning of this year.
Okay. And memory. Have you always remembered this, or has there been regression, or? And I guess that would lead to the question of why do some people not remember, and some people remember a little bit, and some people remember, from what I hear from you, a lot as to what went on.
Well, when I was told that I needed to write this book, I had very few memories.
Okay.
And then then the memories started coming back in my dreams. And I do remember some of my dreams from search and rescue that I always thought were just weird dreams that I was having. And then I could fly, thought, oh, I'm flying in my dreams. And then, of course, you go to the dream dictionary, you're running away from
Yeah. Yeah.
reality, you're
Yeah.
running away from your life. But I could run across tops of buildings. I could run across tops of trees like you would see in the movies you see now. So I believe some of those movies are based on experiences. But I also believe that the memories whether they're a little or a little more or a lot, has to do with the purpose of the extraterrestrials and how the person can handle it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that they want you to do the book, correct?
Yes, I was
And,
told that I had to do the book.
yeah, I heard that before. Okay. And who are you talking? Is there one particular being and that you're talking to, and does it have a name?
It was the Galactic Federation. And
Okay.
then I was talking with my extraterrestrial, I believe it was my extraterrestrial mate, said, you have to write this book. And then another being came in who oversaw the project. And I didn't have a name, but I revolted and rebelled and said, I'm not doing it. And I did suffer the consequences for that.
And what was that? Because I've heard that. I've heard Sherry Wild, if you know Sherry Wild's story, she said, I'm not writing your damn book. So what did they do to you?
They shut my brain off and I face planted a sidewalk and I have a lot of brain damage throughout my brain.
They wait, give me that again.
I was walking down a city street
Okay.
and they shut my brain down. I could see that everything was getting darker and darker.
Oh,
And I tried to stop, but I couldn't. I was in forward motion. And then everything went black and I had this big, huge bruise on my chin. And someone across the street saw me and I landed whole frontal on the sidewalk. And the doctors were surprised that I even sprained my hands. And the man came across the street. He was walking his husky and he goes, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not. Help me sit up. And then I stood up and I said, oh, I have a bus to go catch. And I went off as if nothing happened. And I called my girlfriend on the phone and she said, did you black out? I go, yeah. She goes, you need to go to the hospital. I said, I feel fine. She goes, Gloria, you need to go. And I had another girlfriend meet me at the bus station and took me to the hospital. The CAT scan showed no fractures, nothing broken. My right hand was sprained and swollen twice its size. I put it on an ice pack that night. And yes, the next day it was at its regular size. I still had the big, huge bruise for a couple of months on my chin. And then 6 weeks later is when I started having the symptoms of a concussion, and what MRI showed global brain damage.
did they reverse, like, so now then you decided to do the book. So did they reverse help you out in terms of when you went along with it, or did you just have to do the
I
I,
had to do the healing. I had to do the therapy. I had to learn my legs felt like actually from my waist down felt like it was going to fall off my body, like it wasn't attached. And I went from walking 2 to 3 miles a day to barely making a tenth of a mile
wow.
and taking care of my dog. And I'm like, man, and there was such brain damage. I had difficulty talking. My reading level went from an adult down to a second grade reading level. And this was February 10th of 2020. And then after I got through that in 2021 or 2022, they told me that was time to start writing my book. I had to actually relearn English language and all the semantics. I still have trouble with it.
Wow, but done pretty well for writing. What were you writing before this event? What kind of subjects were you doing before this?
I've done crime fiction, romance, nonfiction books that help people, like healing from the hurts in their lives and how they could elevate their business.
Wow. And did they help you write the book? Did they?
Yes, they did. So I told them I can't do this on my own. And at first I said, oh, I'm going to write a fiction version. They're like, Gloria, you need to write the nonfiction. No, I'm going to write it in fiction form because I needed to divorce myself, distance myself from it. And then I had gotten quite about 3/4 of the fiction book finished. And they said, you need to do this in nonfiction form. So I did a save as, took out the fiction parts and started writing things. And I'm like, what happened, from then they started showing me where I was in the delivery room with the doctor holding the baby upside down and it being blue and not breathing. And with that, I did inherit a learning disability. But with the brain damage, I no longer have the learning disability. So there is a blessing there. And so then I started seeing other things and remembering having dreams even years before of thinking I was in heaven when I was actually in taking care of the plants, seeing bunny rabbits, bats, and the logs and the water running and the horses and the unicorns and cows and sheep and all the different other animals they brought from Earth up there to save them because man's destroying the planet along with the animals.
Wow. And now what as the question must have brain damage. I might just jump to question here. So they help you write the book, and what's the sort of the outline of the book? What do they want people to know in terms of the message they want to?
The message they have is that we don't have control. And the people who are hybrids, we cannot fight against them when they can take us in our sleep. They want us to relax. They don't want us to be afraid. They also want to join together, from the beginning to the end. Here is the process of where we take people. And, of people who start going through the awakening and start remembering, certain symbols and their path of their journey. And that's why they had me write the book the way that I did. And the message that's coming across is if we can work together, it's a win-win situation for both of us. If I can have, let's say that I'm a pregnant woman. Well, let's say I'm a pregnant woman of young age and I'm pregnant, my baby is going to have birth defects. What I would rather have is the DNA sequence tweaked to where my baby does not have a birth defect and it come down the family line to where birth defects can be ruled out for hardier races and for people who are not at the mercy of bullies and, the harmony and stuff like that. I would rather that happen than the child have to go through excruciating surgeries if they have a cleft palate, with missing their lip and having to have that sewn together, or they're born without limbs and then maybe possibly needing a prosthetic. And I know this is an unwise accepted opinion, but it's what I believe is I would rather give birth to a healthy child than wonder if it's going to have birth defects. And not all the tests that are run on the amniotic fluid of the pregnant woman, what they insert the needle in, are accurate. Some women have been told that their child would have Down syndrome and gave birth to normally healthy children.
Now your book did fairly well, correct? The Gray Book. It was one of the top 100 books, I think you said.
Yes, it was number 82.
And so do you figure the message is getting across in terms of what they wanted out, that it's worked out fairly well?
No, I've been bullied and I've had death threats.
Really? Wow.
Yes, I have. And I've been bullied about it and saying that I'm just somebody trying to get money off my story instead of letting people know that these experiences are real and that the extraterrestrials are not demons. They're other beings from other planets, other galaxies.
Now, have you dealt with, because a lot of the gray stories will also involve reptilians and mantis.
Mhm.
Did you have that encounter as well, and how did they fit in?
Well, I've had I haven't seen the mantids, but I have seen the reptilians. And I remember a few years ago while I was writing the metaphysical book 2, that when I was walking my dog, I felt something behind me. And I turned around and there was a reptilian. And I thought, okay, why are they here? And he was quiet, didn't say anything, but followed me. And I look across the street another time and I see the Anunnaki standing, looking like the men in black, standing in the street watching me. And what I have found out recently is that they were guarding me. They were making sure that I was remaining safe. And then I told the reptilian behind me, I said, you don't scare me. And then when my dog was done sniffing the ground, when we turned around, he was gone. But the men in black were still there. And I would have UFOs babysit me up in the sky to make sure I was okay. I would, because they've always been wherever I have been since my 20s. I remember when I moved to where I am now, and I said, I would look up and there was nothing in the sky. I said, how come? So I'm walking my dog going, how come you have, always looked over me, but you haven't now? And then the next morning there were 2 in the sky.
Wow. Now you've had a lot of encounters. I think you said what, 18 or 20 different types of beings. And
Mhm.
why so many? And what's the role of these others? Is there, you got multiple missions in terms of, or is it just encounters? And the question I've always wondered is, it's almost like the aliens all working together. Are they all working together? You did mention the Galactic Council. So talk about why so many aliens and why you have all these encounters.
The encounters are with the benevolence, and I don't know why. I think that I was given the encounters to possibly speak about them. The beings, like the ant people that I saw, I was taken back to the 1920s. And I'm like, or 1920s, 1930s. It's like, why am I here? And I remember a woman came to my side and said, to show you and what the ant people look like. And then I could see them through their human shell. And I thought it was really interesting, and the different roles each one played. Like the ant people would do the monotonous work, that want something that we don't like. The bookkeepers, the accountants, the ones who do the same task day in and day out, they don't drink, because they don't metabolize alcohol very well. They go to work, they go home, and they go to work the next day. They are like your worker bees in a beehive. And I don't understand right now, and I haven't been told why I've been exposed to more of them, like the giants that ran across the top of the mountains that I could see from my apartment window. And they were huge. And if I could see them very clearly, like I see you, well, they look like a black shadow. I wouldn't say I could see their defining features and others, but I've also had negative experiences as well as positive experiences. And I believe it's to give me more compassion to help people who might want to write their memoirs, their stories, or listen to what their experiences are without judgment.
What would be the example of a negative experience in terms of beings?
Well, my experience was with I call them we call them Sasquatch or Bigfoot. They were black with red eyes, long nails. I've had this experience twice that I remember very vividly. And they would have me on their spaceship, and I would be walking around, actually they were behind me, pushing me forward, and telepathically. And then there were some coming the other way. And then a door opened up, and there's this big giant black netting hanging from what we would call a ceiling. And then next thing I know, I'm in this room with them and the floor gives out and I'm hanging from the netting, and then they're scratching at me with their nails. And I woke up with scratches on my arms, puncture marks from where they stabbed me with their nails.
What would be the purpose of that? That doesn't make sense. I mean, in terms, what do you to learn from that? Although, I mean, a lot of trauma does sort of educate people. I mean, it's sometimes we learn from the bad things better than we do from the good things.
I was told by an experiencer that when one species goes to look at someone, they want to see what the person is made of, what how strong are they? Because the night before I had the experience with the extraterrestrial big feet, the Pleiadians, whatever, I can't pronounce that
Yeah.
right, came to my room and took me to their spaceship. And I remember in my bed, I was like in two places at once, because when I opened up my eyes, I could see them holding my body in their arms. And then they laid it over me, and I had received a healing from them.
Did they
And then
announce themselves as Palladians? I mean, did they actually use that word?
they were nothing but a source of light. They didn't talk to me telepathically. They didn't say anything that I can remember. They just took me for, healing. And the next day I felt a lot better. And I noticed over time that things were different with my health, that had improved. So I figured I had received a healing.
I'm just wondering how you knew they were Palladians. Did that word come
From
up?
from the description I have read on the internet.
Oh, okay. Based upon what other experiences, Uh,
Right.
and okay. Now you mentioned, and you've written this book behind me about the paranormal. You've got a lot of abilities that a lot of experiencers also report. Can you talk a little bit about the things that your abilities to do stuff, and do you work with people in terms of people coming to you for messages and predictions and stuff like that?
Well, what I have experienced is the multidimensional. I have experienced parallel lives. I've experienced that since I was a child. I remember sitting on my love seat with my dog when she was alive. And next thing I know, I see movement to my right, and I look to my right, and the love seat was there. And where I was sitting on my love seat, my back was facing north, but my parallel self, my back was facing south. And I had a Jack Russell Chihuahua mix, and my parallel life had a West Highland Terrier. And it's like, no wonder I've had an affinity for Westies, even though I've
Wow.
never owned one. And I've had other experiences when I was walking my dog outside one morning. The sun was, I think it was like 9:30 in the morning. And I walk under this manzanita tree. And next thing, or it was might have been a Palo Verde tree because they're taller. And next thing I know, what I walked into, it went from light to dark. And I turned around and it was all dark, a darkness similar to like sunset. And I looked at the tree and there was like a lizard, this big, huge lizard about the size of an iguana on the tree looking at me. And then I continued to walk my dog, and it was still dark, and we turned around. And then I passed the iguana again. It was sticking its tongue out. And then when we walked out of there and passed under the palm tree, it's a smaller palm tree. When we passed under that, it became light again. So I thought that was really interesting because I hadn't experienced that when I went walking before. And to answer your question, I have had people come to me, what do you pick up about me? What messages do you have about me? And I use that as well as with business and life coaching. I'm able to troubleshoot without even having college experience what a company needs to do. I worked in Valley Decorating in Fresno, California, and I worked in the marketing department, and I was in my 30s, and I was called to attend a marketing meeting because my supervisor was gone and she headed this one department. And I was meeting with all of the other department heads, plus the founder and president, Matt Offen, of the company. And they were talking about how are they going to, what are they going to do with, getting profits back up, because they were barely breaking even. And all of a sudden they looked at me and said, Gloria, do you have something to input? And I go, yes, I do. And I explained to them what they needed to do, how they needed to cut back. And I was in the third of the 3 layoffs. Wasn't expecting that because I was up to head my own department at that point. And the president came to me and said, I am so sorry, Gloria, but what you gave us was very sound advice. They took it to legal and the CFO, and they said, that's exactly what we need to do. And they went back down to 16 to 20 employees. And they really started doing well and focused on what they did best instead of branching out in a lot of different areas.
Wow. Do you do life coaching with people? Explain that.
Yes, I do. I enjoy helping people, or actually guiding them with how to make their own choices, sound life choices and differences. And I had this one man, we met through networking on X, and then we would be, there was nothing romantic, but we had mutual interest in abductees and UFOs, and we would be private messaging. And we would send verbal, audio messages. And I could tell in his voice something was wrong. And I wrote him a message and I said, you can tell me whatever it is, it will stay between the two of us. So he was very vague in what he had said, and all of the answers started coming. This was like on a Friday. So between Saturday and Sunday, I had all these messages coming to me, and I left them all with him. And he said, what was amazing was he asked his mom, I don't know what to do. And she said, ask, because this is in his, what I'm talking about is in his, he wrote an endorsement. And so he started asking God. And when he came back online on Monday, all of his questions were answered.
Wow.
And I didn't have any idea because it was just very vague. And I was pinpoint specific.
Wow. So you that you do that with the books, and you have a website. Talk a little bit about your website, what people can find there.
I don't, what they can find is my books, and what they can find me on social media. I don't have a blog anymore because it started getting to be too much. I found that video was a lot easier for me to go ahead and do. So I no longer have my messages, but I do have what I call healings and teachings, or prophetics and prayers, on Spotify and iHeart, as well as Amazon Music, and I'm on Rumble with the videos that I do. I didn't usually have a prophetic message for a certain month, but this month, for the month of June, I didn't receive a prophetic message, so I didn't do one. And I can also do them by week of what's going to happen and what's coming up. And I can also, it was interesting, a friend of mine back in 2023 said, what's going to happen in the political realm at the beginning in January of 2024? And I told him. And that's exactly what's been happening with Russia and Ukraine. I said, I see battleships. There's going to be a war. He goes, American? I said, I don't know. There is a war that's going to happen. And I told him this back October and November of 2020, and for 2024. And that's what we have going on now.
Wow. So are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
I have mixed reviews. There is some positive. I knew that in May, when I did this, said in May, things were going to look better, April, May, and they have. Now, if people would unite more together instead of nitpicking and in a hierarchy kind of manner and being divided, and if they would stop caring about who's going to vote for who and unite together as Americans, and even in other countries, I believe they're more united than the Americans are, then we can go ahead and have a more optimistic future. But everyone needs to come together. And they need to fight for a better way of life, but unified together instead of divided.
Yeah, I've have the beings told you that? Because I mean, a lot of the messages I've seen, it's basically one line message. I mean, oneness. I mean, you know, you if you work together, if you're divided and against each other, then everything falls apart. And this idea about love, are those common
Mhm.
messages that you hear? This,
Yes, they
yeah,
are.
it's almost like the left brain, the male left brain, let's have a fight, let's battle, let's compete, versus the female brain that says, let's be a family, let's all work together, let's, you know,
Mhm.
so and do they care about this kind of stuff in terms of what we might be, you know, the political stuff? Are they do they give advice about that, or are they just trying to get this bottom line message across?
They're concerned with it, but right now they're observing. I don't know what completely they are joining forces with their purpose for this political realm as well as military. And I I do know some things I'm not able to share, but also they want us all to be one and not worry about it. Just be one, be united, love each other, show each other platonic love, healthy love, start breaking through the negative forces that are trying to take down the American people. And let's do it as a one tribe. We're all a tribe. We're the human tribe.
Yeah. It seems to be going the other way, though. I mean, in terms of, from what I've seen, it used to be a lot more united, but
Mhm.
you know, sometimes that one of the messages they have, that is whatever's been built in fear has to be raised to the surface to be re-seen in another light in order to see it. You got to bring all the negative to the surface, and that we have sort of avoided things for many years, and now it's all sort of coming to the fore. You mentioned, I'd like to get a little clarification. You mentioned ETs and you're mentioning interdimensionals. And I'm
Mhm.
always very interested in the theory of reality. So how do you see things working? For example, where do you go when you die? What's the bottom line? Where are we coming from? Where are we going? And what are we supposed to be doing while we're here? What's sort of the overall story of reality?
It's really interesting that energy goes from energy. I have had different scenarios of where I go when I die. One is I will go back to being a gray. One is I will go to the throne room with God. And another one is that I get to choose another life to come back to. And I would rather go to a different dimension that has more peace. Just put me back on that planet with the animals and I'll for my entire life and I'll be fine. And where are we going is all depending on us and what we do here. So are we going to have to repeat? Let's say that we're reincarnated into another life. Similar, I've had someone tell me that they saw themselves being reincarnated on Earth into the future, where they were in the South and they lived in a city that was under a big bubble because of all the pollution in the air and everything that because of all the toxic gases here on Earth, because of what man has done to this planet.
Do you believe you came here to help, in terms of, because a lot of people will talk about this, you know, get off the karmic wheel and, you know, sit on beach in Hawaii and drink Mai Tais for the next billion years or whatever. I mean, do you see yourself as always being part of trying to make the universe a better place, that you might come back here again, or is that what this is about? That we have these roles in order to try to elevate reality and people, or is it the idea to go back to God to escape?
Well, it depends on, is our life cycle done here? Is all of our work done? And I believe that, okay, we're not going to exactly escape when we go to God, because heaven is full of energy workers. So are we going to go, when we go to heaven, we're going to be working there. It's not like we're just going to sit around and listen to music. It's like everything has its own purpose and work. So whether we come back here and do the work or go there and do the work is entirely on where we are on the scale of our message here. And mine has always been to help people. That's what came in. And that reminds me of, the recovery, search and rescue, helping people, as well as helping people here, always being a listener and being able to intuitively do electronic equipment that just came out on the market. But I could, troubleshoot computers, printers, fax machines. And people are like, how do you do that? I said, I don't know, I just do it. And
No,
copy
yeah.
machines, I was able to fix those. So I think we're all here with different abilities. Some people, we're all here to help. I believe in whatever. Are we going to help in the military? Are we helping in political? Did we come from a political with the extraterrestrials, the ones who are hybrids and starseeds? And, it's like, it's like working together, because the star seeds seem to be gathering together more, all congregating together in order to have a safe environment, and then also to help with the raising of the consciousness and the vibrational energy on this planet.
Do you think there's an agreement between all the star seeds and the people to come in at this time, and this, like, the idea of the three waves, that this is the time when we have to raise consciousness, that you're part of a larger group that's involved in this?
Yes, I am part of a larger group that is involved in this. There are, like you said, they call them waves, or different levels of where we start raising our own consciousness to be able to do something better. Someone I was talking to said, why is my health so bad? I said, you need to raise your consciousness. You're allowing the gravity of the entire world and the energy to eat at you. And when they started raising their consciousness, then they started feeling better, but noticed that they're also having some other medical issues. And I asked them, were you in an accident? Yeah, about 20 years ago. I said, well, it's about right for it to start acting up. You can't escape that. You've damaged your body, to a point where when you get older, these things do show up. But you can still, even if you're not able to do some things physically, you are still able to get the message out through your energy vibes, join groups that raise the consciousness, as well as having experiences to be able to ask what your message is that you need to do a little more, how to raise more love, bringing about by maybe more positive messages. And some people you have people living off grid. They're there for a purpose. They're all there doing what they need to do off grid to prepare and to help other people escape. If there's like an underground railroad, you don't know, there probably is quite a few of those factions going on to be able to help people who they are told to help to bring into seclusion.
Okay, a couple more questions. I want to ask
Mhm.
about, you mentioned the council. Who's on the council, and how does your interaction work with them?
There's the council I report to. There's a council of 10. I had to count how many I've seen. There's a council of 10.
Different
And
beings?
different beings. Some of them are similar to, there might be two of one species, and and some there's not included of all of them. So there's multiple of like the Greys, the Pleiadians, the Lycras, the blue people, the cat people, and they're there to give instruction. If I would go to them and receive instruction, what do I need to do? And I remember, it's interesting being before them and then seeing myself at a wedding, at a wedding of royalty. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And I was dressed in a military outfit and I was a man. So it's like, whoa, this is interesting. So then, it's like I come out of it and say, what is this? And they say, we will tell you at a later time. But all this serves a purpose. I have been before them, received instruction of messages of what I need to do. And now I've received a bigger message recently of how to spread more positivity, and through films that are already out there, getting back to the basic old-fashioned family values to bring it all back together.
What do you mean by films? They actually refer to films, or do you just pick up on this?
No, they refer, the films, and the Christian films, the wholesome films that have been put out, like Little House on the Prairie, that people are leaning more towards watching those reruns again, Andy Griffith, because they need to be fed with that positivity and that wholesomeness. So this is more of a different area that I'm working on with films, and going to be in contact with filmmakers who produce these films to see if we can work together for the promotion.
Wow. How many times do you get together with the council? Is this a regular thing where you're getting instruction?
It has been. I just recently received all this information, I believe this past weekend, but before that, it had been a while since they had been in contact with me.
Wow. Okay, so let's go to the last question is what's your objective? Where are you going now? Or you got other books in plan? What's your next step?
My next step is I'm writing books 2 and 3 together, one after the other, of my crime fiction book series. And I'm enjoying it. I really enjoy that a lot. And I'm also working on with the filmmakers. I just received this information. So I'm just starting at the very basic with the Christian filmmakers and others I'm going to start getting the word out probably another week or two to work with them about promoting, everything's for free. I'm not charging them for this because I don't want people saying I'm discriminating as a business or an organization, nonprofit organization. People can take me to court and dictate how I do things, and I have to go by the rules of the court. But if this is a hobby, which I'm using, no one can dictate what I do with my hobby. So I'm doing this without being paid, without charging any money, to see what I can do with this different platform of screening movies from independent filmmakers and getting the word out in like an award ceremony the following year, and bringing people together
Have
that
you
they
got an
can see.
organization for this that you've put together?
Nope, it's just me. And I have a friend helping me with voiceovers. And if I start getting an organization together with more people at this, I don't really need people right now. In the future, when the work start picking up, then I'll start asking for volunteers to help me.
How does crime writing fit in with Christian films?
Well, how it started with, I was asked to help with a cold case, well, actually missing persons. They're not really cold. It was a missing persons case. And I was able to see the events that transpired around how this one man had died. And that's the Dick Jorgensen murders, what I wrote. And I did fictionalize it. And then I sent it to the police officer as a gift. And he couldn't believe how spot on a lot of that stuff was. And I also helped him find someone who had been missing for 40 years and her body had been dismembered. But I knew information that was not released to the public. And I have been in contact with a lawyer. And that's why I don't do podcasts of seeing into the different cases, because then I'm obstructing justice. Because it then comes across as a true crime. But I can write about them and fictionalize them like a docudrama with some things, and then fictionalize a whole bunch of other things. And I can publish it, and I'm not obstructing justice, because people won't know what is fictional and what is basic facts.
Have you had requests from like police officers to help them in terms of, I don't know what you'd call it, psychic remote viewing or whatever it is in terms of their stuff?
No, I haven't. No.
Any interest from the government in terms of coming on their radar in terms of them trying to figure out what you know, because they're trying to figure it out as well, right?
Yeah, I can't talk about it.
Oh, there you go.
I like breathing.
That's a cliffhanger. Yeah. What do you think about the present situation where people want disclosure in terms of Congress and stuff? Do you think they're going to get it? Do you think any opinions on that?
I don't think I don't think Congress is going to give us the whole truth. It's need to know. And I think that they're just stringing people along. That I think, but it's like wag the tail, wag the dog, where look over here so you don't see what we're doing on the other side. I believe that's what they're using disclosure for.
Do you think there are people, because Congress, I mean, you got guys who, have never seen UFOs, have no clue what the subject is. Do you think that there are people in the government who understand it at your level? Because I mean, there's a level of saying, yeah, there's a phenomena, but then there's another level that says, there may not be time and space, and there's multidimensionals. I mean, are there people in the government who understand this very clear aspect of the message? And
Yes, I believe there are, and I believe that's why they keep their mouth quiet. That why they're quiet. They keep their mouth shut, because they're probably in fear of their lives. Because you
but why
put
would
too
they
much.
not try to help? I mean, why would you? I mean, if you've got the message, why would you sit in the background and allow the world to go to hell in a handbasket?
Well, if you're working for the government and you give that information out while you're working, you may not make it to work the next day. There have been some people who have retired from the government who have given the information out to the public who died mysterious death. So I believe the government is they're keeping control over their agenda of what they want people to know, because I believe there are people who they're just the puppets of the people behind the curtain who are pulling the strings.
Do you believe there's stories that the intelligence is working with elements of the government to assist them, to help them, to give them information? And why would that be happening? Why would they work? Say if they worked with the American government, I'm a Canadian. Are they working with the Canadians and the British and the Germans? And what about other countries in terms of their knowledge of what's going on?
Actually, other countries like Canada they're very open to UFO reports. Africa is very open to things that are going on. They embrace all of the diversity where the Americans aren't. They're fighting diversity. And I don't know why America has decided that they need to take control, but I think that all came about from Plymouth Rock taking over what they think is a better way of life. And, they destroyed how many Indians from Plymouth Rock when they, got off the boat and not worked with anyone. So then it became us against them. sort of thing is what was already set off when someone came from a different country. And I think that's the same thing that's going on with when the extraterrestrials are here, we're like us against them. And I think I don't remember the rest of what you said.
Yeah, no, it's just it's a sort of the ultimate question is, there's talk about cooperation, and there's talk about we're shooting them down and we've got them captured, and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of I just wanted to pick your brain as to, because you've got contact with them, and that's what like the one high level intelligence guy said, because we cannot control the phenomena, we watch those that are interacting with the phenomena. Lights in the sky have limited knowledge or limited material. So that would make sense that if you're have some sort of contact and they want to figure out what's going on, they're going to be watching what the contactees are saying, because they're trying to figure it out as well. So I'm just trying to pick your brain on what the intelligence may have told you in terms of this kind of stuff, or where we're going, because it's been going on for 80 years. And I think now we're starting to talk multidimensionals. We're starting to talk about things that are much more complex than just a flying saucer type thing, where there may be an underlying message and timelines and stuff like that, where it's gotten a lot more complex than when I started in 75. It was just simple. There was a UFO and that was an extraterrestrial, and end of story. And they somehow got here, and now it's all this other very complex overlays of material that has been added by people like you that are saying, well, no, there's this going on, there's this council, and there's all this kind of stuff, which in 70s nobody ever maybe thought of stuff like that.
And there are hybrids. We have hybrids
Yeah.
here already on Earth who are living in seclusion, who have been slowly getting used to the American way of life so they can fit in.
Yeah.
They've learned English, they've learned language, and they will eventually come out of where they've been staying. And I've spoken about some are in underground tunnels. And that is, we have so many different tunnels that if you don't know the way, you would get lost.
Mhm.
That is where they are staying in a lot of those places. And some of them are already slowly being released. And I believe that from what I've heard, is that the extraterrestrials gave the government information years ago that we can use, that we're using now, in order, like a treaty, in order to go ahead and abduct people and do DNA sequence testing and
Okay.
interbreeding.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's do you think that they have, like, if they were to come out of the tunnels or whatever, do you think they're going to be able to influence? Because the way it is now is that you get backlash on your story, is like, just leave me alone. I want to make some money. I want to take my kid to soccer practice. I've got things to do. Don't bother me with this stuff. I mean, how these beings, these hybrids come out, are they going to have any more influence than you and I in terms of shifting the getting the Titanic going the other way?
They will just slip into mainstream society. And then after people get used to seeing them is when they will start talking about, and if when people in the subject comes up about UFOs, extraterrestrials, they won't necessarily say, I'm a hybrid.
Yeah.
They will go ahead and just start slowly with influencing with the bottom line message and getting people more used to extraterrestrials living among us. I'm one of them. You can't tell that I am one.
Yeah. My question is whether they're going to be considered to be illegal aliens, and
No, they will have, no, they'll have their identification, legal identification. That's
okay.
what's been working, in the works, that
But
they will
given
come
by
here.
who? Given by who? Like the
There are
yeah.
workers who are helping with it. That's all I can say, is
Oh,
there are
okay.
helpers
So
working with
maybe you're
it.
going to do a book about this down the road. I hope you can sort of enlighten us, because this, I mean, it's an evolving thing that is we're learning more and more all the time by talking to experiencers as to what really may be going on. And as I said, it's much more complex than when I first started 50 years ago in terms of the understanding of what may be going on. So I appreciate your input, and you've got these other books coming out, and your books are on Amazon
Yes.
and your website. Give me your website.
Actually, it's my link tree. You can look me up at, Gloria Hass Books on Linktree.
Okay, I'll put the link in the show notes. Have you got, do you lecture around? Do you speak anywhere? There's not that many conferences going on like there used to be, but are you open to lecturing and stuff like that?
I am. If somebody would ask me, I could do it virtually. I wouldn't be able to do it physically because of some health concerns, but
Yeah.
I would be interested in doing
Yeah.
that.
Okay. And what part of the country are you in?
I'm in southern Arizona.
Oh, okay. So you're in the warm area. I'm in the cold area.
Yeah, it
And
was 100 today, and tomorrow's going to be 105 and reach
wow.
108 in a couple of days. Yeehaw, summer's here.
There you go. Well, Gloria, I really appreciate your telling me all this. And if you have another book, let me know. Let's keep in contact, and maybe we can do this again and educate the people some more as to what's going on, because everybody's looking for answers, and I think you're one of the people who may be able to provide some answers in terms of the amount of contact, because a lot of people have contact, but it's very limited contact. They don't remember anything. They just know something's happened. You've got a lot of recollection. So I tell people, let's go look at these books and read your stuff, and it may give them some answers to the questions they have as to what's happened to them and what may be going on.
I hope so. And if they're interested, when they look at my link tree, there's a contact form. Write a question. I can incorporate that into another book, and I could also answer them, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I'll have the link on the podcast and the YouTube. But that is true. You have a contact form where people can actually ask you questions, which I really appreciate you're doing for people. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, and hopefully we can do this again soon. And I really appreciate your sharing with me tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
Enjoy.
Gloria.
All righty.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.